Hello everyone and welcome back. Today we're going to be covering sending server updates to every user that is on a specific page. In the previous video we covered only sending an update to a single user, so maybe you're the person who just upvoted a post and the server wants to send you back that 34 people have upvoted it so you can see the number 33 go to 34 on your screen, for example. Maybe you're searching on the website and you want a little drop down that has like autocomplete suggestions coming from the server. You don't want every user to see those. You only want the one user that's searching to see those. That's what we covered last time. Today we're going to cover a situation where one user posts like a comment and maybe you want everyone else to see those comments as well if they're on that page. We're not going to cover editing and destroying comments by clicking buttons. Because those are different types of actions. Today we're only covering something that goes to everyone. You don't want the ability to edit a comment to go to everyone because then everyone would be able to edit everyone else's comments. Hopefully that makes sense. We're going to be starting from a blank Rails application and we're going to go a little bit faster because we do have to set up these posts and these comments real quick. So to get started, we're going to do a bundle add devise. We're also going to do a we'll do a bundle add devise, then we want to do a Rails G devise :install, and we can string these together to do a Rails G devise user to create our user account. Once that's done, we can go ahead and we can do a Rails G scaffold post to create our posts. We'll give them a title and a body of type text. Once that's done, we can do a Rails G model for our comments. We'll give each comment a body of type text, a user : belongs _to, and a post : belongs _to. Excuse me. And then we can do a Rails G controller for our comments. We can then go ahead and do a Rails S. Now at this point, I do want to mention if you run into any issues during this tutorial with your Redis server not working properly, the reason could be that you don't have a Redis server running. So I'm going to go ahead and stop mine real quick with this very awkward command. And now hopefully if we go ahead and we try to refresh, it'll tell us we have to run some migrations. We can go ahead and run those and then we can go to the home page and we should be good to go. One thing I want to do is inside of our DB and our seeds folder, our seeds file, I want to create some 2 accounts basically that we can test stuff with using devise. So to do that, I'm going to go ahead and copy and paste some code in. We're just going to create some users. It's going to be an email of dean@example.com. Everyone has a password. And then we do one for John Doe as well. So that'll give us a couple user accounts to play with. And then we can go ahead and stop the server, hit Control L, and then run a Rails DB :seed, which will add that information into our database. And then we can do a Rails S again to start our server. Now, if you do want your Redis server running, all you have to do is type redis-server, assuming you have it installed, and then you can start it up. It'll give you this cool little icon. But maybe you want it running in the background. You can do a redis-server --daemonize yes. Just remember, you got to run this every time you start your computer up or your server reboots or whatever. So just make sure that you do like wrap this somehow so it's always running, or you just accept that you always have to start it. Like on my dev server, I usually have to start this manually because I can't be bothered to set it up myself every time I record one of these videos. Or I can't be bothered to set up like a whole system to auto run it. But whatever, that's good to go. Let's come over here and let's get started. We're gonna come into our Explorer, our config, and our routes.rb, because in here we got to do some stuff to make these comments work, of course. It's not that complicated. Basically, all we want to do, I'm gonna hit Control+. We want to set the root to be the post index. And then for our posts themselves, we want to wrap the comments inside of the posts so that we can have something like /post/1/comment/3 to go to the first post and the third comment if we so desire. I'll go ahead and save that. And then we're done in our seeds and our routes.rb file. Next thing we want to do is come into our app, views, posts, and our post show page. In here, we'll just collapse all of this stuff that doesn't really matter because it comes with the fresh scaffold. We'll just do one more div. This is just going to be for all of our existing boring show page stuff so we can collapse it. What we want to do now is create a form to create new comments. So to do this, we'll do a render comment/form and we'll pass in our post. We don't necessarily have to do that. It's just for my sanity. We then come into reviews and our comments, right click new file underscore form.html.erb so that our comments form exists. And then inside of this form, we basically want to, let me just grab the codes. You don't have to watch me type this. We want to do a form width for the model. We then pass in an array where we pass in the parent of the relationship, which is our post, and then the child, which is our comment.new. We pass in remote true because we're doing stuff on the server. And then we do a do form with a text field and a submit. If you want this to, for example, be a text area, let me go ahead and save this and save my show page. If I create a new post, I'll give it a test and a case, create post. We have this form here. If you want this to be a text area instead, you'd come into your form here, change this to a text area, Control S, refresh the page, and now you got this cool little text area where you can write more text into it. I'm going to leave mine as a text field though, because I really don't care for the sake of this tutorial. Okay, we have this form. Let's come back to our show page. Now what I want to do is render our comments. So we'll come down here, we'll do something like at comments.each do comment, and we can end it down here. Inside of here, we just want to do a render for our comment. Now, the reason why we can do this is because we'll have a partial here inside of our comments folder called underscore comments.html.erb, which matches this model, which means Rails will be able to figure this out on its own. In terms of what goes in this, you're just going to do an empty div. Inside of that, we're going to have two sections. It's going to look a little bit scary, but I'll walk you through it. The first one's going to be a p tag with an em for an emphasis. This just makes the stuff inside italics. Then we have some square brackets. That's just for stylistic purposes. You don't need those. And we just throw the ID of the comment inside of square brackets so that it looks official. We then have some strong, which just bolds the text inside. We grab the comment.user, grab its email. So this will be dean@example.com. We then split it at the @ symbol. So you'll have an array where you have Dean, and then you'll have comma, and then @example.com. And then we grab the first element, which is Dean, and then we call capitalize on it, which just capitalizes the D. So we get a capital D Dean here to make it look like we have a username. But we don't, of course, we're just grabbing the email. Super hacky, but it works for the sake of these tutorials to make them look a little bit fancier. Down here, we're just going to grab the comment body and put it in there. You'll notice inside of this comment partial, at no point are we referencing the current user. That's very specific, and it is with a great deal of forethought that I didn't do that, because we're going to be sending this partial to all of our users. Because every user gets it, it's like I'm preparing the mail to be sent to all of these people's mailboxes. I can't send it to their mailbox and then at the mailbox have it go, oh yeah, I'm meant for this person. I have to sign the name before I send the letter because there's no way for me to send a letter that then arrives at some person's mailbox and then goes, oh yeah, John. It has to come knowing that it's for John, unfortunately. If you try to reference current user in here, you'll get a hissy fit from Turbo saying, hey, I don't know how to do that. And it's really just a pain. So if you need something for a specific user, like a link to an edit button or delete button, what you need to do, unfortunately, is broadcast your stuff to everyone, maybe even include the buttons and then hide them with JavaScript if they don't deserve to be on the page or some other weird logic like that. A good way to do it is to just send out the buttons to everyone and then do your permission checks on your controllers to make sure that if someone does manage to unhide the buttons somehow and they make it to the controller tells them, look, you're not the same user as the one who made the comment, so I can't let you edit this. Simple solution. Unfortunately, not very elegant, but that just tends to be the way things work, unfortunately. But okay, we have this. We have our show page. Pretty much all we have to do now is set up the controller and some of the logic to make sure that everything's associated correctly. So let's come into our comment.rb. Our comment already belongs to everything that it needs to. Let's come into our post. Our post is, of course, going to has many comments with a dependent destroy. Dependent destroy just means if you kill the post or if you delete the post, you delete everything that's associated with it. And then for the user, you could, of course, do the same thing if you so desire. It really doesn't matter. I don't think we're going to be using the user logic at all, but we do need the post to has many comments. Once that's done, we can come into our controllers and our comment controller. This only has 2 lines in it. Let's go ahead and let's change that. 2 lines is never going to get us past Elon Musk's code review where he counts lines of code. So let's go ahead and let's add a whole bunch of unnecessary lines of code. You can start by saying this needs a before action to authenticate the user. That line is necessary. Then let's do a set post. This line isn't because we're only going to be using it for one method, but we want to pad our numbers. Come down here, create a private method area where we do a set post. And then in here, we do our at post equals post.find by the params of post ID. And as you can see here, we've managed to turn what should only be 1 line inside of the create action into like 5 lines. So that's pretty neat. We'll definitely pass that code review now. We can then come down here below the set post and do the comment params where we take in the require comment and we permit the body because the comment does have a body. Then we can come into our create, do a at comment equals at post.comments.build. This is just the same thing as doing like a post.new or a comment.new. It's not saving the comment. It's just like initializing it. Once we have it, we can then say, all right, you're logged in, so we can now associate a user with it. We already have a post associated with it because we're on this specific page. And now generally at this point, you would have like an if statement that says if at comment.save, redirect to the post, else redirect to the post with an alert that says, hey, you couldn't save that, didn't work for some reason. We're not going to follow best practices and do error handling here. We're just going to say at comment.save. We're also not going to redirect. Last time what we did here, we had like a turbo where we did like a turbo stream and then we appended the comment roughly equivalent. We passed in the local and the partial. This only worked for one specific user because it's happening in the comments controller. There's a pretty clever way where you can get it to affect all users instead. You don't do it here, so you just get rid of that. You leave this as an empty create, come over here, you refresh, and then you run into issues because this is not defined. So our at comments are not defined. Why is that? Well, it's in our post show page. Let's come into our post controller. Our show action's empty. What I want to do in here is say at comments equals at post.comments.reverse. And the reason why I'm doing this is just so that the newest comment appears first. That way I don't have to think too much. Go ahead, save that, come over here, refresh, and now we're on this page. Let's go ahead and do a test case. Click create comment. It'll tell us we have to sign in first, of course. Local. Let's go to localhost port 3000/user/sign in with dean@example.com. A password. Come in to show this post. Type test. We'll hit enter in the console so everything goes down. We'll click create. That gives us some green text. There's no logic here to redirect us after we create it. But if we refresh, we then see it appear. Now I want this to appear for all of the users. So we have to go to localhost port 3000/user/sign in incognito, john@doe.com with a password of password, log in, show this post. We'll say test from John, but of course you have to refresh on both pages to actually see it. Let's go ahead and let's make this a automatic refresh. Now this is where the magic happens. This is gonna maybe blow your mind, maybe leave you incredibly underwhelmed, but you can come into your comment. So your comment model, you can come in here, Control B. You can do a broadcast _2, throw in an arrow, do your comment. And then right here, we don't need this to be the comment.post. We could do something like comments. What we're going to do now is we're going to create the stream real quick. You'll see what this means. So we come over to our, wherever our post show page is. Right here, our post show page, we have a render comment form. And what we do here is we just say turbo stream from comments, and then we'll just give it an ID of comments as well, just for laughs. We can come over here and refresh, and we can see here that we're running into an issue with our comment model. Now, what is the issue? Well, it might be upset because we don't have a turbo frame tag yet. So let's come into our comment.html.erb. Let's get rid of this. Well, I guess we can do two choices. First, we can do div with an ID equal to, and then in here, we can open up some Ruby code. We can do a DOM ID for the comment. And what this will do is it'll grab the comment or the name of this model, and then it'll give it an underscore and then the ID. So this will be translated into comment underscore 15 if it's the 15th ID, for example. But this is kind of not great code. We got some like Ruby templates inside of some regular HTML. So let's get rid of this. And instead, let's do a proper turbo frame tag where we just do a some parentheses. In here, we do a DOM underscore ID for the comment. Same thing we just did in the div. And then we just wrap all of this in a do block. We can then go ahead and save this. It does the same thing as the div with an ID. And then we can refresh. But here it's telling us we don't have this association, which means there's usually an issue in the actual comment or in the actual model itself. Oh, and this is why it needs a broadcast to. Of course it does. Of course it does. Of course it does. So now that we have this broadcast to, let me come in here. The broadcast to the comment here is probably not necessary, but if we save this, we should now be good to refresh, and I'll sort of explain what happens. Essentially, we have the model itself. We have the comments right here, which is our stream. This stream is basically what it's listening to in like the Redis database. If something happens on the Rails server broadcasts to the Redis database, and then it's a pub sub, so stuff gets published to it by the server, and then the client subscribe to those updates. So when the Redis database gets an update, everyone here in the view land sees it, and then they go, oh, there's been an update, I better put that on my screen. Simplified explanation, but you get the idea. So we have this stream. The stream is handled in the post show page, which is right here with the turbo stream from comments. And if we Control-Shift-I in our web dev tools, we can see the turbo cable stream right here. That's pretty neat. And then the other part of it is for each of these comments, we want to have a turbo frame or a div that has the ID of whatever that comment is with its ID. The reason why we don't just do the number 2, we do comment underscore 2 is because you might have like posts that are turbo updated or users or whatever, and you want to separate them by more than just the ID number because they might share an ID. So in this case, we have like a comment with an ID of 2 and a post with an ID of 2 and a user with an ID of 2. You get the idea. Once all of that's done though, we can now refresh on all of these, and we can come into like Dean and say hello from Dean. We can hit enter. And you can see John also saw that. John can then say, hey, Dean. And you can see that gets updated as well. What's interesting, though, is we're getting a little bit of a disjoint set here with where these are being appended to. And the reason is the comments themselves right here are inside of this at comments.each block, right? The append in our comment, not in our comment controller, in our comment model is happening on this comment stream, which is up here. So if we actually expand this comment stream, we can see that 3 and 4 are being added to the actual turbo stream from tag. So if we instead wanted them to be added to this block right here, we'd have to give it an ID instead, which we can of course do. So let's get rid of this, come down here. And wrapping around all of these comments, we could then do either a turbo frame tag or a div with an ID of ID equal to comments. And then we can come down here and we can close this div. So this gives us the ability to wrap all of these in this ID here. And now if we refresh and we refresh, hopefully you'll see the expected behavior. And it always helps to see it not working the first time. At least that's my belief. Because it just makes it clearer what could go wrong, I guess, so that if you run into stuff, you can troubleshoot it. So now if we say test with Dean right here, we'll see where this gets added. We click create, and it gets added to the end here. Now, that's interesting behavior, but the entire collection's now here. It's being added to the end. That sort of makes sense. So how do we make this like go to the beginning? Well, we can take this broadcast here and we can break it down into its core components, of which there's 3. So let's go ahead and let's change this from a broadcast to the 3 components. The first one is going to be a after create commit. And then after we create something, we'll just say, we'll do a custom method. We'll call it create broadcast. We'll take this line and we'll just copy it 2 more times. We have the after create commit. We have the after update commit. And then we have the after destroy commit, which I don't have in my notes for some reason. Now down here, we'll create these 3 methods. We'll say after create commit. We'll say after, I guess all 3 of these are the same method as well. I forgot to copy them over. After update broadcast, and we'll call this one destroy broadcast. Down here, we can do the same thing. After update broadcast, after destroy broadcast. Now for the create, it's going to be the same thing we did in the solo one where we just updated the page for 1 person. We're just going to say, after you do the create broadcast, you want to broadcast a prepend to. So a append puts it at the end like we have right now, but we want to put it at the beginning. So we use the for prepend prefix. We then grab the comments stream, which of course inside of our show page is the thing that's wrapping all of our comments. So that's our target. We put inside of our target the comment partial, and then we pass in the locals, which is just the local variables that it needs. And right here we can see we're passing in a comment. So we probably got to pass in a comment. So that's it for our create. If we save this, come over to these pages and refresh, make sure you're refreshing. And now we type test case 42. We click create. You can see test case 42 gets added to the beginning. So John can reply yay, and now it stuff's at the beginning. Cool. How do we do an update? Pretty much the same way we did the broadcast right here. We come down to the update. We tab this over. We don't do a broadcast prepend. We do a broadcast replace to the comments, pass in the partial and the locals. Now it's important to note, you can also do like a target, and your target can be something like, maybe you just want your target to be like yourself, right? So in this case, we could say target self, and then we can tab this over. Something like this. Really depends on how you want to like bring this all together. In this case, it seems like it's a bit redundant because we're already perfectly capable of grabbing these without the target self. Really depends on how you want to do it. The last bit though, the hardest part by far is going to be the broadcast replace, because unfortunately, GitHub Copilot spoiled it. It's just broadcast remove to your comments and then you're good to go. Now, I said we weren't going to cover these, but we can at least show you how they work. Like I'm not going to create the update and the destroy buttons. Those are up to you to implement however you see fit, with some JavaScript maybe, or you just want everyone to be able to do it. But in this case, you have both right here. I'm going to go ahead and hit Control-Shift-tilde to open up a VS Code terminal, just so that it's a bit easier to play with. Actually, we have the terminal right here in the same repo, right? So let me CD out of here, CD into video, and then we'll do a Rails C in here. Okay, so what we can do is we can grab the comment.last, which is going to be that yay comment from John. We'll grab the comment.last dot, we'll say update, and then we'll say body should be hello world. And this is coming from our terminal, right? And we don't have any logic in here for our terminal. But remember, anytime an update commit is fired, this will fire. So if we run this, we're going to fire an update commit. And watch this yay text right here. You can see it changes to hello world because it does a comment update right here. Every time that happens, it'll work, which is sort of the magic of this, is that it'll fire anytime the database has these changes being applied to it through the Rails logic, right? So in a similar vein, if we grab the comment.last.destroy, if we watch the hello world here, and let's watch it from John's perspective as well. If we run this, you'll see it gets deleted from everyone's window. And that's without even needing a destroy button. So as long as you're capable of firing that exact logic from a button somewhere in your application, you'll be able to replicate this functionality. So hopefully now you've seen like the different ways you can do this. Of course, you don't need these to be able to do the update and the destroy. That was mostly just showing you with the added ability to do the broadcast prepend too. So it really depends on like what kind of functionality you need. If you're cool with your stuff going to the bottom of the list, you could get rid of all three of these and just leave it with that initial broadcast to for the comment, which was like broadcasts to the comment. And then this was the, I think we called it the comments is how we did it. So this is like the deprecated original method. You could do this, but we'd use these three just because if we need to change the order in which things are inserted or something away from the default behavior, then it gets a bit more cumbersome. Now that's going to do it for this tutorial. Of course, we still have plenty of other stuff to cover. Like I've mentioned and alluded to the idea of having like edit and delete buttons here. Those really depend on what your implementation is. I can try and generalize them for a future tutorial. If that's something you're interested in, then feel free to leave a comment down below to let me know. But for now, this is going to do it for this tutorial. Hopefully this was helpful, and hopefully I will see you in the next video.